Hey everybody, welcome back to Concierge Confidential. I'm your host, Brian Ortega, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking about some recent things going on in Vegas, including the closing of another hotel here on the Las Vegas Strip. So we've already had the Tropicana close, which is earlier this year, and we are in the next couple of days, if you are listening to this during the week of, I believe, the 15th of July, we will be closing the Mirage, which has been here about 34 years here in Las Vegas, and really was one of the first hotels to kick off the resorts that you now know of here in Las Vegas. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to tell you about what it's like when a hotel is closing. I was part of the team that closed MGM Grand right before COVID, and some of the interesting circumstances that what goes through the mind of somebody who works at one of those properties and what it's like to work at one of these properties when you all know there's an end date and you're kind of working your way towards that. So let's go ahead and dive into that coming up next. Okay, everybody, so let's go ahead and talk about closing hotels. So we actually went to the Mirage, me and my mom, on July 12th. Nope, July 14th, just to kind of check it out. My mom wanted to play one last time there. And the thing is, it's kind of funny with these old hotels is that they closed for a reason. This one was a little bit different reason. So the Mirage itself was actually a perfectly fine property, but a little sort of backstory. It was bought by the Seminole tribe out of Florida. They own the rights to the Hard Rock Hotel brand, which are going to be building a Hard Rock Hotel in its place. They're going to be utilizing the original property and then also building onto it with a big giant guitar. You've probably seen the news at some point, and they will be taking out the iconic volcanoes in front of the hotel, or the volcano in front of the hotel. So the Mirage itself opened in 1989 by Steve Wynn. Steve Wynn is a casino mogul that basically, if you go anywhere in Las Vegas, everyone knows who Steve Wynn is. His name is on a building here because he built it that way. The Wynn Hotel and Casino, which also owns the Encore property as well, and has a bunch of other properties in Massachusetts, Macau, certain places like that. But anyways, Steve Wynn came to Las Vegas. He started his time as a beverage distributor. So he worked for like the local Budweiser, distributing alcohol to the different hotels on the Strip. From there, he ended up buying a couple different properties. One of the main ones being Golden Nugget was one of his first acquisitions, and then he built up the Golden Nugget from what it was, and this was during the 80s. He then purchased and owned Caesar's Palace for a little while. He sold that property to its current owners, and then from there he had all that money and decided to build the wonderful and fantastic Mirage Hotel and Casino. The Mirage opened in 1989 and really was the first resort casino of its kind ever built in the world. It really was one of those things where you came to Las Vegas to stay at the Mirage, not just to live inside. So it was one of those things where you came to Vegas to actually experience the Mirage, not just stay in the Mirage, is what I was trying to say. So what does that mean? So hotels back in the day that were built mostly in the 60s, 70s, were built as places that housed you. Everything was affordable, and they also had gambling, and gambling was the major reason you came. But he really made the change over to being more of I don't want to say family-friendly Las Vegas, but a Vegas that's a little bit more approachable by corporate America. A lot of the Strip was known for being, seedy or owned by, mobsters and that whole sort of stereotype. And he was the one who made it sort of cool for corporate America to, move to Vegas and work here and visit, and it was all fine. So the Mirage itself was a mega resort. It had world-class restaurants. It had a beautiful accommodations inside the hotel, had this big giant volcano show on the front, which is really the reason why many people sort of gravitated towards that and became iconic in Las Vegas for all of those items. I do want to note that all of the major water shows, the really famous ones, the ones that became famous during Vegas's sort of heyday of the new millennium, are all due to Steve Wynn. He had the idea that if I put an attraction for free in front of the property, perhaps people will come inside. So in his later iterations, he changed that by putting the attraction inside of the property, which made people actually have to go inside. And oh yeah, not timed. Unlike the volcano, the pirate ship, and the fountains at their respective hotels, the Mirage, Treasure Island, and the Bellagio. So all those water features, all attributed to Steve Wynn. So anyways, let's talk about the Mirage. So the Mirage's final days haven't been, fantastic. There's been a lot of news about the progressives. So what does it look like when a hotel closes? So just to give you sort of my view of what happened. So me and my mom, we got there about 9 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. And this is basically the Sunday before they close. So they have maybe 2 or 3 more days left. And many of the machines are turned off. A lot of the machines that have mega progressors, they've been turned off just because you can't win them anymore. They don't want to add any more money to the pot, and so on and so forth. I also was actually looking at a machine today that was out of order because it was still on, but the mega jackpot had been won, the second jackpot not won yet, and so on and so forth. So many machines are not working. So that's kind of what you have to look forward to when you go in. It's also like really jarring to see how dark a casino is when slot machines aren't on. Hotels are really much lit by their slot machines, which is so interesting. So we got to play a couple old school machines. My mom played the pinball machine, which is just 3 reels. Hopefully you had a pinball and you can play pinball. The restaurants are, for the most part, still open because people are staying there basically until the night before, the day of, essentially, and you're checking out on the last day. A lot of the cool features that are known for these properties are taken out or protected. For example, the Mirage Aquarium, which sits behind the front desk, which is quite famous. If you've ever seen the movie Vegas Vacation, you can see all those fish swimming around. Those were taken out. They were repurposed and sent to the Mandalay Bay and their aquarium, so that'll be kind of cool. So that was changed. They still had the atrium, which the atrium was one of the more interesting additions when they first opened, which is awesome. Obviously, all the Siegfried and Roy tigers and lions are not there, and then of course the dolphins have been replaced in different places. But moving on, the thing that we were really excited to see it's one of our favorite things, and they're quite iconic, I have to say, is when you walk into the front desk, walk into the main valet, or from the main valet area, you see these 2 beautiful topless mermaids that lets you know that you're at the Mirage. So they're made in bronze, and you always have to, when you walk in, make sure you rub at least one of them for luck. It's not me. I don't make the rules. That's just what you have to do. So there's possibly a picture of me someplace making sure that I'm getting all the luck I possibly can from those beautiful ladies. They'll probably be auctioned off at some point, or not. Maybe they'll keep them for the future. I think that would be awesome to keep them. But hotels are not kind to very important things. They usually just auction them off and at different consignments. And people like to have a little memorabilia for each one. But one of the most popular things to do when you go to these old hotels is to collect memorabilia that you can take home. Not a lot of it is very portable, but one thing that is quite portable, which I now have a couple of these different pieces of my collection, is the gaming chips that you get from the casino games. You really can't buy them anymore, and especially when you get to the final days, they get very, very touchy about giving away the ones. But usually people like to grab the $5 chips. Obviously, when you get more expensive, they obviously go up in price. So some people get dollar chips, some people get $5, $25, $100. If you get like a really serious collector, because it's actually it's $100. So I ended up going and playing my last game at the Mirage being craps right in front of the Love Theater after we took a bunch of photos. It was a very expensive souvenir because I had to I put money down, and you always feel kind of dirty when you just like give them $5 and you take $5. They don't like when you do that. So I played $25 craps, so it was a very expensive souvenir because it cost me essentially $75 to take this home. So I now have a Mirage poker chip to go along with my Tropicana poker chips. Gaming chips, really. I also have a couple Caesars ones too, but I don't know if that one's going to close very soon because they are the title of their property. But anyways, so played craps, had plenty of table games available. Very different than when Tropicana closed, because Tropicana, when they closed, much smaller casino, they saved their stained glass ceiling, which sits above their casino, which is much, much smaller, and a much, much older casino. The Tropicana opened in the 50s, and the Mirage opened in 1989, obviously. So, the reason I wanted to talk about this is that what is it like to close a hotel? Like, what's it like to be on the end of the working side? And I have to tell you, during COVID, it was the absolute most depressing feeling in the entire world. So this is essentially what happened. So we figured out, and the good thing about the Mirage is that they have been told multiple times that we're going to be selling the property. They sold the property. We're going to be remodeling the property. It was a little muddled whether they're going to close the property entirely or if they were going to, work sort of in sections throughout the property. But they decided to close the whole thing, and they're coming back in, I believe, 2026, which is in a couple years. So what happened with us was during COVID, when obviously COVID had been, found in different places, it started to spread. And it was one of those things where like our occupancy was like 105%. And then it was like, oh, now our occupancy is down to 85%, and then to 60%. Just to let everybody in on this, the MGM Grand occupancy, if we ever drop below like 85, is extremely low occupancy for that property. Our average occupancy was about 91%. Throughout the year. That was an average. So if we ever got down to like, let's just say 70%, that's crazy. 60% is like unheard of. We were at, I believe, 30% occupancy when we closed. So it was extremely, extremely low. And essentially what happened is that you come in, or we came in, it was extraordinary circumstance that said, well, we have to kind of lay you off, and you'll have to be like part-time workers during this time. That was essentially one day that like, okay, your hour is going to get cut. And then we ended up coming on the next day. And on the next day, they said, we're closing the property entirely. Nobody's staying on. The hotel will not be open. And that was because through the government, they said that they had to close all casinos in the United States. And essentially everything was on lockdown. So we were still working for about 2 days, and I was, very, very nervous because I'm like, how am I going to pay rent and all this other good stuff? So they said, oh, like, do you want to come in and work on this Monday? Which was the last day that we were open, was a Monday. And I said, yeah, because it's like, I need cash. So scared, we go into work that day, and essentially we're only in the back. Nobody was in the front of the house, which is similar to what I saw from the Mirage, whereas they had like one concierge out in front, and like one front desk agent working the front desk. So when you're doing that, you're just, a lot of people are in the back. You're just taking a lot of phone calls. We got an abnormally amount of phone calls that day. So we ended up getting phone calls about really everybody's reservation, and every single one was the same. And the thing is that when you're nervous, nobody knows sort of like what's going on, but everybody's reservation that was made during the COVID time. So let's just say you had reservations for like end of March, and it's like the beginning of March. You're saying, oh, well, we won't be coming in that day because of all that's going on. We can't do, we can't come in. That was the same thing we heard about 100 times that day. And all we had to say was, yep, it's already been canceled. It's going to go back on your card, so on and so forth. And the cool thing was, I have to say, this is kind of the cool thing from this whole like COVID situation, was that everybody was very understanding. Like, we were very understanding, as our job was like, hey, we don't got to do nothing. We got to touch nothing. But everyone's like, well, we'll be sure to come back when, this is all over. I hope to be back. I hope to be back soon. I hope to be back soon, which was very nice. It was very nice to hear. It wasn't a lot of, anger. It was just trying to be understanding. And I feel like that's something similar to what maybe the Mirage employees are going through, is that, thank you so much for all you do. And obviously they're not going to have reservations that are canceled or anything like that. But whenever you do see like the waiters and the waitresses, the bartenders, the bar staff, the custodians, all you're thinking about is, I hope they have, jobs lined up. It's always kind of weird when like this situation is, it's like, do you get your job when you come back, and that kind of thing. So hopefully, this is all I could think about, was hopefully that they have things lined up coming up soon, just because people work at properties for very long times. There's a lot of people that have worked at MGM since the hotel opened in 1991. 1993, get my days right. And that's over like 30 years at this point. So you're always kind of nervous, especially if you're one of those people, because it's like, what do I do now? But other than that, vibes are fun if you are somebody that's, visiting and just sort of looking through, just because you're like, hey, look, it's the closing of a hotel. This is the last time we're going to see this place. This is cool. But I did talk to the craps dealers, and the dealers seemed like they were having, somewhat fun. When I cashed out, they said, we'll see you in 3 or 4 years from now, which brings me to my next point, is that this is inevitable for many hotels on the Strip. You can usually tell when a hotel is going to close. Everything is kind of pointing towards that direction. This happens a lot with major properties owned by corporations like MGM Grand and Caesars. They will usually sell off, or sell a piece of their property to another company, because it's really not making money. It's maybe not part of their brand as much as they would like. So that a lot of that goes into it. For the longest time, Circus was part of MGM Resorts, and then at some point it just sort of broke off and became Circus on its own. No one ever does that anymore for being too successful. For example, for like the Bellagio doesn't say, you know what, we're better than all the other MGM properties, we're going to break off and become our own property. That doesn't work that way. It's all part of the same umbrella. For example, Cosmopolitan is doing very, very successful. You know what happens when you're a successful property? You get bought by the big ones. That's just the way it works. They have more money. They want to invest in that property, and they want to connect all of their other properties, so it comes under their umbrella as well. For the longest time, Cosmopolitan was owned by Blackstone. One of those weird things, but anyways, Blackstone sold to MGM Resorts. It came under their umbrella. Typically, hotels, when you are successful, you get bought by the big ones. When you're not successful, you get parceled off. Typically, it's very hard to keep up that property, especially if you don't have the funds for it. And then you usually end up selling to another company, and that company ends up doing what the Seminole tribe did, and they are going to close the property and build their own thing. So that's just sort of one of those things. Same thing with Tropicana. Tropicana was owned by a company. They ended up wanting to sell it, and it's currently in the process of becoming the new home for the Athletics. But if you listen to that idiot Vital Vegas, he's talking about that it's not going to happen. We'll see. But I feel like all arrows are pointing in that direction. But same thing with the Rio. Like, this is a really good example of like what happened to the Rio from Caesars Palace. Rio was owned by Caesars Entertainment. It wasn't doing very well. They didn't like that property at all. They didn't keep up on it. It became the Circus of Caesars Palace. You're selling off the asset. It was bought by a new company or a new family, and they are trying to turn it around, which it's just going to be so hard for the RA to turn around. But a lot of times when you are in a good location, that saves you a lot of heartache. For example, the Bally's Hotel, which is owned by Caesars, it's in a good location. it's really hard to knock down good location properties. So what'll happen is Caesars doesn't want to sell off that plot of land, so it becomes the Horseshoe. It's rebranded. They have a tower that is now owned by Caesars Palace. Sorry, is now operated by the Paris Hotel because, again, branding. And that's what happens. So sometimes location saves you. For example, the Flamingo might be here till the day that I die, because location. It's a huge brand in Las Vegas to be the oldest hotel on the Las Vegas Strip, even though it may not seem that way. But a couple signs: when you start getting broken off from other properties, not a good thing. People always like to ask me, what's the next hotel that will go down? So Tropicana now filled out the bingo card because we all knew that was going to go away. Didn't think the Mirage was going to close for a very long time because, again, who can knock down the beautiful volcano? Bellagio, keep doing your thing. You're awesome. But if I had to say what property do I think might go next, if I really had to guess, Circus Circus. Circus Circus is definitely worthy of being imploded. That property sucks. I will never stay at Circus Circus. It's just terrible, absolutely horrible. A lot of people are pointing towards the Luxor Hotel, but I think the thing with the Luxor is what has going for it is, one, it's really become a really popular spot for pregame activities before anything at the Allegiant Stadium. It's an iconic shape with the pyramid. I'm sorry, like, you can knock it down, but it just is part of the skyline of the Las Vegas Strip, and sometimes being part of the skyline kind of helps. So some people say the Luxor. I think the Luxor is safe for, a good amount of time. Excalibur's another one that it's just like in such a prime location, that'll be hard to take. I mean, like Harrah's, like maybe Harrah's. It's in a really weird spot just because of the spot on the Strip, but I can see Harrah's. The Link, I always thought would maybe be something that a hotel to be coming down. But the thing is that with the Link is that it's in such a good location as well. It's sort of branded as sort of a approachable hotel on the Strip, that's the one that people want to go to. So it's hard to say which hotel is going down next, but it does feel sort of like the 90s where many hotels were knocked down in that decade. We had 10 hotels imploded and then built in between the span of 1990 and 1999. I mean, we'd had hotels that opened like the Bellagio, the Venetian, the Treasure Island, MGM Grand, the Luxor Hotel. Excalibur opened, I think, 1990. I have to double check that. Mandalay Bay opened at that time as well, at that point, which was, I believe, 98 or 97. Then you had New York opened in 1996. So all these hotels, MGM Grand in 1993, you had all these hotels opening at all the same time, and it was a really exciting time for Las Vegas. And I think we're sort of approaching that moment where many of these hotels are going to be opening in the second half of 2020, going into 2030. We're going to have many more hotels opening on the Las Vegas Strip. But overall, it was fun to be able to walk through the Mirage one last time and see, the sports book where I watched the Packers lose in the Fail Mary. Well, I was there with my dad. I stood inside of the sports book with my dad back when I was not 21 against where it is now the California Pizza Kitchen. There was a deli there, the Carnegie Deli, which had gigantic sandwiches, which is now where there's another deli shop, which isn't as good. What else was there? That's where they filmed so much of Vegas Vacation, where Clark Griswold gets absolutely annihilated by the blackjack dealers. Wayne Newton talks about, you're in food preservatives. What a gas, huh? So that happened over at the Sportsbook Lounge, and just really fun things. The Beatles Love Show obviously came to a close, which I saw that one. Many comedy clubs that were performed there, or the comedy club that was there. One Oak, which was essentially one of my first nightclub experiences that I ever went to, was at the Mirage. So overall, I do have fond memories of the Mirage. My first dine around as a concierge with the Mirage. So the thing is that this is very normal in Las Vegas. Hotels have to close so we can build new ones. And it's just sort of the natural cycle of life for a Las Vegas hotel. Things get bigger, things get strong, things get bigger, things get, trendier, and it's hard to stay trendy when you are building. It's very, very difficult. But we're doing better. I mean, the Aria was built as sort of like this big glass structure, sort of like what you would see in New York, where it just sort of stays for years and years and years. But we all know that implosions are something we love all the time. So, anyways, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Concierge Confidential. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll be back next week, probably with a hotel highlight. I did a couple questions on Instagram stories, so I'll probably do more of those because I actually had a lot of people ask a lot of really good questions, and I'll probably try to do those in the future sometime soon. So again, follow me, Brian Ortega _26 and Concierge Confidential _LV on Instagram, at Keys to Vegas on TikTok. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If I see you out in town, come say hello, and remember, keep it confidential.